Did you have any discussions either with Trump or his team in the lead up to that Sun interview where he basically lit the torch paper for saying, I do not believe that Britain is now free to do a deal with us?
Yeah, I mean, not so much on the deal, but on the Brexit process itself. Some of the language he used was very similar to what I said after Chequers. But do you know something? I didn't have to persuade the president to say these things. And there's a really important point here beyond the trade deal, and that's this. President Trump and all of those around him believe in Brexit, and because they believe the nation state is the right unit upon which we should operate. So, as I say, they didn't need any persuasion from me.
No. OK, Mr Farage, you did slightly sidestep. So, did you directly advise him?
No.
Did you talk to him?
No, I haven't spoken to him for about 3 months.
Yeah, and did anyone on your team or your advisors talk to him? I mean, you say the language was very similar, but has there been direct
Well, the
contact?
analysis was very similar.
But was there direct contact from your advisors with President Trump?
No, no. The point is, Trump picked out the key point about Chequers and indeed the whole Brexit process, and it's this. Parliament, our Parliament, is not carrying out the will of the people, which is why Trump said they're not getting what they voted for, and he was on that absolutely right.
Well, I'm not sure about that, actually. We had a referendum in 2016 which was about whether or not to start the process of leaving the European Union.
Not whether to become president, but to leave already.
To leave the European Union. But hang on just a moment. But the form and the way in which we leave the European Union was reserved to Parliament. Now, the problem that we have is that Parliament can't come to one view. And that's maybe not surprising. During or before the referendum, Nigel himself said if you had a 52-48 result, that would be unfinished business. And it wouldn't necessarily resolve the issue. And to some extent, Parliament is reflecting the country. We are a country that's divided on this. And I think certainly there is not a majority or consensus in Parliament for us to leave without a deal. Nigel would be quite happy for that, but I don't think that's where most of the British public
Nigel, we've got a weird situation where Jacob Rees-Mogg, Peter Mandelson, Tony Blair, they're all agreeing about something. And this is unprecedented waters, right? But is there a practical point? I mean, I've had a view, I've told you this myself, that I don't think it helps anything here that the person who's driving the train, Theresa May, is a Remainer. She doesn't believe in the direction of travel. Would it not make more sense to have a Brexiteer driving the train who actually believes in it, whether it was Boris Johnson, David Davis, whether you came back into the fold here, I'm sure, or Jacob Rees-Mogg, or somebody who ideologically absolutely believes in the Brexit project.
Yes, of course. I mean, it's been a disaster from the start. And the trouble is, what Theresa May's trying to do is she wants to placate both sides of the argument within her own party. And by trying to please everybody, she's finished up pleasing nobody. And I thought the polling that was out yesterday in The Sun on Sunday was remarkable, showing that only 7% of the country thought the Chequers deal was a good idea. So she's in real trouble over this. But Parliament's in trouble over this. You know, don't underestimate the anger that is out there in the country. People who voted for Brexit are genuinely beginning to feel betrayed, and that is not a good thing for our democratic system.
Oh, come on. Look, the biggest betrayal of all has been by Brexiters to this country. They made a whole bunch of promises, £350 million extra per week for the NHS. Nigel himself said it definitely will be beneficial for our economy, seems to be rowing back on that. They are now working hand in glove quite clearly with the Trump administration, and have they cheek to call everyone else... Everybody else.
How do we know for a fact that we are going to have massive economic hardship when we actually Brexit? And the reason I ask you is, I remember the debate over the euro. I remember being assured by the very same politicians and business people who are screaming now we're going to fall off a cliff, that if we didn't join the euro, it would be a disaster. In fact, it was the best thing we never did. Right? I remember after the referendum itself, George Osborne saying
that there'd be
a recession within weeks, right? So every apocalyptic economic warning we've had, actually, in the last 20 years involving Europe has turned out to be a load of baloney. Why should I look at you and think that you, Chuka, Umunna, when you say it's going to be... No, but nothing personal. When you say it's going to be a disaster...
Except you made it personal.
How can I really believe you that you know that?
Well, look, at the end of the day, you have to look at the evidence, and we already know that we've seen a massive inflationary impact from the Brexit vote, which has meant that people are paying more. We've seen wage depreciation as well. But in the long term, the Prime Minister herself has said that we're going to have less access to our biggest market.
Right.
And necessarily that's going to have an impact on the economy. And pretty much the economic consensus is that we are going to take a big hit. The government's own research says that as well. But this is, I mean, in a way, the issue is here is that the big difference is that 2016 was a kind of this hypothetical debate about what would happen if we voted a particular way. The rubber is, you know, hitting the road on this process now, and we know all these new facts.
We knew
and
we were voting
that's
to leave
why
or remain,
Justine
but nobody
Greening
knew
and other
what was
people
behind
are
it.
saying, look, we do need to refer the deal back to the people.